All right, good morning, everyone. This is ALJ Motter. Colette, can you hear me okay?
Can you, oh, there you are. Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, good morning, Colette.
Hi.
All right, it is now 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Let's go on the record. Good morning, my name is Julia Motter, and I'm the Administrative Law Judge assigned to preside over this matter. Please also let the record show that Commissioner Kennedy is in attendance on the line. This is the oral proceeding being held for the proposed rulemaking in docket number RU 000-19-0132 in the matter of proposed modifications to the rules regarding termination of service. The notice of rulemaking docket opening and notice of proposed rulemaking for this matter were published in the Arizona Administrative Register on May 21st, 2021. This oral proceeding is being held as provided under Arizona Revised Statute, Section 41-1023, to allow adequate discussion of the substance and form of the proposed rules and to allow persons to ask questions and present oral argument, data, and views on the proposed rules. I will begin by asking staff to present information on the proposed rules, and I may ask questions of staff to clarify the record. I will then take public comment. Staff, may I have your appearance now for the record?
Your Honor, Maureen Scott and Candria Allen on behalf of the Utilities Division staff.
All right, good morning, thank you. And has staff prepared a statement of information regarding this rulemaking?
Good morning, Your Honor. This is Candria Allen. Yes, it has.
All right. Just one moment, everyone. So my understanding is that we have a translator present. Is there anyone on the line who needs the services of a translator?
Where's the button?
Right. I'm going to give everyone a second to unmute if they need to and ask one more time, is there anyone on the line who needs the services of a translator?
Judge Motter, the translator cannot unmute her button, but she wants to say something.
Okay. As in she's in the queue where she can't unmute?
Your Honor, can you
Let's go off the record.
Your Honor?
Okay. Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay, good. My name is Audrey Feldman. I am here as the interpreter for this session. I would like to say to the session that there is interpretation service for those who need it. Okay.
Okay.
I want to say that. I would like to say that in Spanish, so any Spanish speakers can hear it.
Okay, one moment. Colette, let's go back on the record, and now please go ahead with your statement.
Buenos días. Hay servicios de interpretación al español por si alguna persona que quiere llamar los fuera a necesitar. El que quiere llamar los fuera a necesitar.
All right, thank you.
little bit
Recording in
nervous,
progress.
but we're super excited to be hosting this roundtable discussion about 20 years of uncertainty in order to really provide context about what this means for dreamers, DACA recipients, undocumented students, and formerly undocumented folks. We're going to be having a great panel discussion where we're going to be sharing that. So we're going to be kick-starting with that. And with that, we're going to be hearing some remarks from U.S. Senator Durbin, who has been one of the champions of immigration. And before of that, I know we have so many people joining today's discussion, and we wanted to show gratitude for being here today. It is really important. It's deeply personal for us to be living with this uncertainty, and want to especially acknowledge our both U.S. senators here in the state of Arizona that have some representation, U.S. Senator Sinema and U.S. Senator Kelly. Staff members are joining us today for this conversation, as well the mayor of Tempe, who's going to be joining and listening, Mayor Woods. So thank and deep gratitude for the panelists who are really gonna showcase what 20 years means. 20 years, it's said lightly, but at that time I was only 10 years old, and so much has happened since then. So thank you so much for joining us today, and we're gonna be starting with the remarks of U.S. Senator Durbin.
That's what's really the key word when it comes to DACA. It's temporary. When President Obama first announced it, he said, because this is temporary, Congress needs to act. There's still time for Congress to pass the DREAM Act this year, he said, because these kids deserve to plan their lives in more than 2-year increments. Well, that year has turned into 9 years. Over the years, the DREAM Act has been a victim of a filibuster on the floor of the Senate 5 different times. As the DREAM Act has languished in the Senate, hundreds of thousands of young people have been left with their futures in doubt. But that hasn't stopped them from fighting for their dreams and giving everything they can to this country. It has been my honor to be the voice of the Dreamers for 20 years. Dreamers have taught children in our nation's classrooms, dazzled audiences at world-class music venues like Carnegie Hall, fought in American wars, and have started American businesses. During the past year, as our nation was ravaged by a pandemic, and we were cheering on the healthcare heroes who risked their lives for us every minute of every day, Dreamers were saving American lives. According to the classification used by President Trump, more than 200,000 DACA recipients are essential, critical infrastructure workers. Among them are thousands of frontline healthcare workers.
ended up the first in your family with a college degree. What made you want to teach math, especially in the same high school where you attended? And how do you think you're making a contribution to those students? Sorry, Yadira, we're having a little trouble hearing you. Not yet. I'm going to maybe move to the next person, and then we'll come back to you and hopefully get that fixed. Jose, you have a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering and master's in secondary education, but engineer because of your immigration. What was the most difficult to practice in the profession that you studied?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. And it's actually really, I think that the most difficult part was I felt like I let my parents down. I felt like I let my family down just because they made so many sacrifices for me to have this opportunity. I'm the youngest of four. I was the first one to go to college and had that opportunity. So that was really difficult. Just every day seeing their faces, and I felt like I let them down. So I needed to do something. And my mom always told me, like, don't swallow on your sorrows. You got to get up and go out and fight for it. And I just remember how we came to the country with nothing, and she just kept fighting. And every single day, just wake us at 3 a.m. in the morning, make sure that we went to school, make sure that she made food, and make sure that my dad was working. So I was always just went back to that. What would my mom do? And that just kept motivating me to keep fighting. And it was difficult when you would see on social media your friends doing internships or working in the companies that you would want to. But I just kept, I'm like, I'm gonna find something. Maybe this path won't be for me, but something else will come. And thankfully, I've been able to have so many blessings, being able to be an educator, being able to help the community, be able to know some amazing people who are in this panel that I'm so grateful for. And I'm just really grateful for the opportunity that I've had.
Well, and you're doing so much, and we'll learn a little bit more about that as well. So thank you, Jose. Yadira, are we up? No. Try it, maybe.
Can you hear me now?
Now we can hear you. Wonderful.
Oh,
so
yay.
so tell us about what drove you to teach math in your high school. Is it Carl Hayden High School?
Carl Hayden High School, yeah.
Tell us about
Jose and I are alumni.
Wonderful.
So, I mean, I was just really, when I first started, I always had like the little, oh, I want to be a teacher type of thing, but it wasn't really something, that I wanted to pursue. Because I was so good at math, I kind of got pushed to like the engineering path. And I did actually study engineering my freshman year, but then I took a course in teaching to fulfill like one of my other requirements. And I was like, okay, this is where it's at. So I kind of just went back and switched majors to teaching math, just because math came easy to me, really was kind of why that ended up being it. But yeah, so I started teaching in the district actually while I was still doing nonprofit work. I became a substitute first because I didn't want to get away from the fields, because I knew eventually I wanted to return. And then I just ended up at Carl Hayden 3 years ago. Prior to that, I did 2 years in another high school. But it's really fun, just being there. Whenever I introduce myself at the beginning of the year, I always make sure to make it a point to let them know that I am a DACA recipient and a dreamer, because a lot of our students don't think that anybody relates to them, especially in the community that I teach. I know firsthand their struggles, and even if it's not, coming from a mixed status family, if they're the ones that are documented, then they still have probably parents or tios or tias who are undocumented, and they still have that fear of having a mixed status family.
Yeah, I think that's
they benefit from it. Sometimes some of them do approach me and they tell me, oh, Miss, you have DACA. My sister does or something, you know, and I'm like, all right, well, if you guys ever need help, let me know.
Yeah, I think that representation really makes such a difference. And thank you for making sure that your students know that. I mean, the term mixed status families is something people should know about because we have neglected our immigration system for so long. We have lots and lots of families that are in that mixed status state. So it's obviously really important to address that. Let's go to Angel, Angel. He says, don't call me Angel, call me Angel. Angel, I understand that you don't currently qualify for DACA. Is that correct? And what would you say are the most difficult things about being undocumented? And how do you think this impacts you and your brother, I think, is also undocumented, if that's correct, or not a DACA recipient. How does it impact you?
Yes, so first of all, it's an honor to be here. And no, actually, my brother and I did not qualify for DACA. A lot of my friends that have no recollection of their native land, they contribute to society and call Arizona their home, as it is their home. It's the only home that they know, do not qualify for DACA. And for those of you who don't know, one of the terms to be eligible for DACA is having resided in the US before June 15, 2007. I like to call that the magic number, one, because it just feels arbitrary to me, and two, it's because it gatekeeps dreamers from following their dreams. The last time my family and I entered the US was actually 3 days after that deadline, which made me ineligible. And still, I'm super frustrated at the fact that for 3 days, in society's eyes, I'm deemed less than, kind of unworthy. Like, I should not have to validate my existence at every corner. Yet I do, because I'm scared. Like, scared to not be the person that I know I can be, scared to not have honored my mother's sacrifices, and scared that everything that I have worked so hard for, and that despite my contributions and accomplishments, would be compromised. And with that being said, one of the most dangerous and difficult thing in society revolving this issue is society's political inability to differentiate between being a DACA recipient and being undocumented. And I think this is really dangerous. This is because the conversation becomes heavily overtaken by DACA-related issues. Meanwhile, the same injustices surrounding undocumented folk get completely pushed to the side. And thus, like, it renders spaces for undocumented people almost non-existent. So yes, like, it is extremely frustrated. And yes, I was hesitant to speak out about this because for some time I felt like I was being selfish. But all of those feelings really go away when I start to realize that it's not just me. I'm not the only one going through this. Like, there's so much more people out there who are feeling the exact same things. And I would also like to say that DACA is not a bad plan at all. Like, some people just like come up to me and you're like, why are you always saying that you want DACA to end? Like, do you not care about us? And it's not like that at all. Like, I'm super grateful for all the people who are able to attain those protections, because being undocumented is truly heartaching, it's stressful, it's painful. And I know that it is all these things and I wouldn't wish it upon anybody, but DACA is not a solution, and it does not fix our community's problems or injustices.
You are right, Angel. I mean, and I want to just say one thing for sure. You do honor all of us. You honor your mother and the sacrifices that she's made, and you honor all of us here today, because this fight that you're taking up is so important, and we all need to listen to every one of you and your perspectives. So I really, really appreciate what you've shared with us today. Next, I'd like to go to Ola. And Ola, you were valedictorian of your high school class in Michigan and graduated with a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and women's studies from the University of Michigan. And your dream was to become an oncologist and save people's lives. But because of your status at the time, you didn't qualify for any financial assistance. How do you feel you've been limited in fulfilling your dreams and contributing to this country?
Hi, thank you. When I was getting ready to apply for medical school, what I came across was what I felt like was a lack of resources for undocumented students, really ambiguous or unclear acceptance policies for undocumented students specifically. And in addition to that, I felt like there was very little to no financial guidance or support for students like myself. And then at the time, I also, had been undocumented for so long. It had been, like 18 years, and I had been reporting, my family and I had been reporting to ICE for over a decade. So when you couple that with also having been detained and almost deported back in high school, I had come to a point where I was physically and mentally just completely exhausted. I hadn't really taken the time to process all of that systematic trauma, and also like some of the ICE episodes that I had endured. And I really needed to make space and take some time to process that and go through everything that I had gone through and get out of that fight or flight mode that I had been living in for so long, which I think so many people that are undocumented can relate to. So that's where I was at the point after I graduated. So I made some space to do those things, and I dedicated quite a few years now, several years, to the time to just heal, process, and move forward. And I found different ways to contribute to my community and pursue my passions. I work for a healthcare company that provides Medicaid services, and we strive to provide high quality resources in underserved communities.
Well, thank you, Ola, for your story and for your service. And, I don't think people think too much about the kind of stress and trauma that people who are undocumented live in. And, just the idea of, feeling somehow that you are here illegally and have to deal with law enforcement and have to deal with restrictions takes a big toll on families and your emotions. And I know, Yadira, you too have had a lot of this same kind of experience. I mean, you were born in our neighboring state of Sonora. We live in the Sonora Desert region, but you faced a lot of family separation. I mean, first when your mother migrated here to reunite with your dad, you left your grandparents, I'm sure other family members behind. You remember your abuelito, your grandfather, calling you chapis as a child. And then when you were in college, your dad was deported and your abuelito passed away. What was it like to experience that, your father being deported? And were you able to see your family in Sonora when your grandfather passed away?
No. So it was spring break of college in 2010. Luckily, it was 2010 spring break because I was off of school. Otherwise, I don't think I would have survived that semester. But basically, my dad got pulled over, and it was in 2010, and like Michael mentioned previously, it was like right in the midst of oh, thank you, baby, thank you, Mama. Sorry, I have my 5-year-old with me right now. But he got pulled over and detained sent to immigration. It was in the heat of the immigration movement here in Arizona, so anybody that basically got detained for whatever reason, pulled over, would get they have restricted their status. My dad got detained 2 days later. My grandfather had been sick for a while, so he passed away. And it was just heart-wrenching, because like you didn't know what to focus on. Did I focus on my dad's being detained and trying to like figure out how to keep him in the US, or did I focus on my grandfather just like passing away? And it was definitely hard, and it's still very hard, to like recall it because I was very close to them. And unfortunately, no, I didn't get to see my family when my grandfather passed away. But he's remembered, and still lives in my heart. But yeah, it was a very surreal situation to go through because at the point, I was still very involved within the nonprofits and the immigration fight in Arizona. And it happened to me, and I kind of froze, I didn't know what to do. And I felt like I should have been more prepared, and I tried, but it just didn't work out and my dad still got deported. He signed a voluntary departure because he's like, I can't be detained with all of this going on. So he didn't feel that he had a choice.
What
And
kind of work was your father
so
doing?
vividly.
What kind of work was your father doing here?
Landscaping at the time. I recall trying to get him not detained, and the verbiage that the immigration officer used was, he doesn't have any ties to the U.S. So mom and I didn't count because we were also undocumented. He owned a home, but that didn't count. All of his immediate family, his sisters, his mom are in the U.S., but that didn't count either. Nothing counted, and his verbiage was literally, he has no ties to the U.S. I was like, okay.
Yeah, the injustice that we see is just overwhelming. And, I really appreciate you telling us that part of your story, because it is important for people to understand the stress and the kind of challenges that you face every day when you live in the country without a legal status. Michael, in 2012, you became a DACA recipient, but it wasn't until 2016 that you were able to join the service and adjust your status. So now, technically you're living the American dream, but there are many dreamers waiting to do the same. What do you think a pathway to citizenship for dreamers would mean to them and to this country? How would it impact their lives and the lives of this country?
Yes, Lisa, I became involved in 2010, and just right now listening to everybody's stories is bringing back a lot of memories. Being involved impacted me, right, emotionally. It's been daunting to the family. I heard several words here from our panelists, like mixed status families, having ties in the U.S. I heard Angel saying, right, that he feels that he has to justify feeling deemed less than worthy. And the reality is that our contributions as immigrants are beyond recognizable, right? They are enormous to our communities. But I know that a pathway to citizenship, even legal residency, would bring comfort to families, to those very youth who are currently fighting for DACA immigration reform. I believe that a pathway to citizenship would bring security to our families, first and foremost. But I think the contributions would just be enormous, continuously beyond what they are already today. I can tell you that for myself and my family, my parents did not earn their residency until about 2-3 years ago. But even now, there's days when I still think about past experiences, getting pulled over by Phoenix Police Department, being pulled over by Border Patrol, and having to share my own story about how my family was a contributing family to our communities. And I believe that our contributions to our country, right, would be just enormous. We're already taxpayers. I heard essential workers today, right? We are already essential workers, right? There's farm workers. We have families contributing already as it is. We have our healthcare professionals. I believe, though, that a pathway to citizenship would just be recognizable of all the talent and hard work that we have right now back in the States. I think first and foremost, it would bring aid to our families emotionally.
And a tremendous asset to this country. Look at what you're doing. All of you are contributing in so many beautiful ways, including serving in the armed services. And I remember Senator McCain. You make me think about our beloved Senator McCain when I was talking to him about the new immigration bill that he was trying to pass. I think it was 2013. And we talked about, the pathway to citizenship. And he said, you have to include citizenship, Lisa. We have to include it because that's when people really learn the rights and responsibilities associated with this country, and they become the best citizens of any citizens we have. And I thought, that is so true. So many people who fully appreciate what it means. And that is clearly represented in all of you. Well, let's talk a little bit about your testimony 10 years ago at the first hearing for the DREAM Act. I mean, first of all, what was that like for you? And obviously, since that time, you've been able to adjust your status. What opportunities do you feel you have now that you have legal status? And what do you think that pathway to citizenship would do to help others who are in limbo?
Well, I think that it would be great to be able to remember that day, but I think I'm probably blacked out and I can't remember anything that happened that day. So I will get back to you on that one. As far as what a pathway to legal citizenship would provide for other undocumented individuals, I think, like Michael said, it really, I think, would provide that space to start that healing process. And also it would allow space to start thinking about future state, because so much of what we live through every day is present state, getting through the next moment and worrying about the things that you can control and not focusing so much on the things that you cannot control, like your status at that point. So I think that for so many of us that have adjusted have been able to adjust status, it's been a privilege to be able to create that space and to start that healing process and to start being able to plan for our futures. And that is, I think, the goal for everyone. Everyone deserves to live with that type of dignity, and everyone deserves to be able to be autonomous in selecting what their future looks like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ola. And Jose, you've been such a strong advocate for Dreamers for such a long time. I understand you interrupted President Obama in one of his speeches when he was announcing the DAPA program, Deferred Action for Parents, when you had already had your DACA status. Tell us about your commitment to this fight and a pathway to citizenship for the undocumented community. Tell us about how you've risked so much, even your own status.
Well, something that Yadira and has mentioned about deportation. I was 10 years old when my dad was deported, and I remember vaguely, how like Phoenix police came to my house. I remember when he was arrested. And I remember it took a month or 2 months for he to come back, and there were coyotes and there were guns. And I was afraid, and I don't remember a lot of 10 to 12 years old. I don't remember that time. So for me, I never want to feel like that again. I felt powerless. I was a little kid. I remember praying in a corner, and I hated to see how a lot of young people, a lot of children are going through that same thing again. So wow, I was nervous. I was afraid. I didn't want to. I don't like public speaking a lot. And I didn't want to interrupt the president, but for me that was an opportunity to bring some safety, some certainty to my parents, to the parents of Yadira, to a lot of the folks. And I just hate to see people suffer, specifically children, for things that doesn't make sense to me. It's people are just trying to make a better life for themselves. Oftentimes people are feeling violence, poverty, and they're looking for an opportunity. And we deny them that, and it's really, really upsetting and heartbreaking to see how that trauma lives on with you. And as Hola was talking about, it's this healing process that the community has not had. There's been years and years and years of trauma. And for me, my hope is that we can get to heal the healing process soon, because you can't start healing without having the acknowledgement and the safety to do so. You have to live day by day, and it's exhausting. And to me, that's why I'm so grateful for the relationship that I built, because of that, I don't feel like I'm alone, and that has been able to sustain us moving forward.
Yeah, Jose, it is so unjust, and it is heartbreaking, as you said, to know that you've experienced that kind of family separation and trauma from police when your families are here making a difference for all of us and working within our communities. Is your father back with you now?
yeah, he was able to come back, and thankfully that was a different. It was easier to come. But as Michael said, every time there's a police behind you, every time there is highway patrol or any law enforcement, even if it's security who approaches you, you have to freeze. It just everything starts coming up, and when we were able to get driver's license here in Arizona, that was such an incredible moment because that was the time I felt like I don't have to worry about myself now. I have to worry about my parents, but at least I don't have to worry about myself. And that has been such a big adjustment that I know a lot of people who are undocumented, a lot of our youth don't have that. And a lot of our adults don't have that. So for me, it's like simple things like that mean so much. It changes your whole perception of the day because it's just feels so nice to just drive and not worry about it.
Yeah, there's still so much injustice in this system that we need to fix. So, Angel, I'm going to let you have the last question before we go to your closing statements. I understand that you and your mom left Mexico to escape poverty and violence, and here you are. You're a Barrett Honor student. You excelled in high school. When was it that you actually realized you were undocumented, and what barriers do you face to getting that higher education now and pursuing your dream to having this better life?
Yes, so growing up, I knew I was undocumented, or at least I partly felt what it meant to be undocumented in a way. So in elementary school, my mother had to talk with me that one talk every immigrant child is so afraid of. And it's not the talk when you get a girlfriend, it's the deportation talk. This is what we're going to do if I don't come home one day. And that to me and to any child, honestly, is very traumatic. If my mom would be late anywhere, if I was at school and she hadn't picked me up in like 20 minutes, 5 minutes, I would start to panic because I didn't know what to do. Like, I was like, oh my God, am I going to be separated from my family today? Is this the day that my mom was talking about? And sadly, that was not all that it was. Um, Maybe if it were, it would be a little better, but that's not all that it is being undocumented. The terror really doesn't stop there. I really feel like I understood what it meant to be undocumented when I entered my first year at Metro Tech High School. That was the point when I realized that I was more different than I initially thought. Unlike my friends, they were able to get driver's license. Instead, I would shake and my heart would feel heavy every time I would look at an authority, a police officer. Like, I would like not be able to drive sometimes just because I couldn't deal with all the stress and all the anxiety. So while most of my peers and friends were able to get work permits, I would have to work under the table landscaping. And these were all methods of adapting that I took upon just to try to get over this barrier. But I often think, why do I have to do this? Why is it me? Why did the world choose me to go through this? And it wasn't until I joined and heard about organizations like Aliento that I was like, wait, it's not just me. There's so much more people out there going through this. And that also made me feel better. But it was a bittersweet feeling because it also made me feel bad in the way of like, whoa, like, you know what I'm going through and I know how much it hurts. So you must know how much it hurts. And also most of my time in high school consisted of me asking myself the one question, am I going to be able to go to college? And the truth is that despite everything I did, it never felt like what I was doing was enough. Even now, I graduated with a 4.7 GPA. I took all the AP and honors courses that my high school offered. That still didn't feel like enough. Sleepless nights, doing scholarship applications, that didn't feel like enough. I did sports. I became president of various honor society clubs at my high school, and that still didn't feel like enough. I decided to go above and beyond. I recognized that to fulfill my dreams, I would have to work 10 times as hard as everybody else. And even when doing so, I felt like I was not doing enough. And partly, I feel like that's because we live in a society that always tells us, like, hey, you like fix your papers, or when are you going to adjust? And that just makes it feel like there's something wrong with us. Like we need to fix something from within us, when in reality, it shouldn't be like that, because there's nothing wrong with us because we shouldn't have to be paying a price to live our dreams or to have a prosperous life. Nevertheless, I have full confidence that dreamers adapt. We have been and continue to every day. And facing that reality of having to work 10 times as hard as everybody else was only a portion of what is granted to others like having to work 10 times as hard was really frustrating. And partly it was because others would get stuff effortlessly, and then I would have to work 10 times as hard and still not be eligible. But in all honesty, like my dreams of becoming an engineer, being an attorney, studying law, and giving back to my family and community was my motivation. That's what worked for me. And all I can say is that I'm really grateful for these hardships because they've made me the person that I am today.
Well, okay, not only is there not anything wrong with you, but we are all incredibly proud of all of you and everything that you've accomplished. I listened to your stories. I know people on this webinar listen to all of your stories and are really in awe of everything that you've accomplished despite the hardships that you faced. And so it's time, Reina, for us to pass the DREAM Act. And I know we may be running a little short on time. So I don't know, Reina, if you want to make sure that we have this strong call to action now for all of us to engage and make sure that we pass the immigration reform as a whole, as Angel mentioned. It's not just the DREAM Act. That's a big, big step that we think we can get over the finish line, but we definitely need to push for comprehensive immigration reform to make sure that everyone who is here, who is living with that undocumented status, is given that right to live here legally. Reina, do you want to take it from here?
Thank you, Lisa. I appreciate it. As you said it, these stories are just a little glimpse of the 11 million undocumented folks that have multiple difference of status in our country. And beyond the heartbreak, beyond the challenges, like we've been able to thrive, and we've been able to see that we have to figure out a way forward, and that sometimes has been out of necessity. And if you are listening today or maybe later on, this is the moment. It's been 20 years of inaction. We know that it's gonna be crucial that we get your support. I feel like year after year, we come back and we share the stories, but stories are human lives. And as Michael said, it's essential workers. It's not only dreamers, but right now we have a clear opportunity that there has been legislation already passed in the House of Representatives that can be passed in the Senate, and we need to make sure that we're working together to get it through the finish line. So we are launching today We Are All Arizona campaign to ensure that folks have an opportunity to take action with us and join us. We know that with this, we're asking you to do 3 things that are very simple and that you can do from the comfort of your home. We're asking you to join and promote the campaign We Are Arizona. We know that it is in the hands of the Senate, so we want to make sure that you are understanding that it is the moment for us to join together. 2, invite dreamers and members of the community to speak about it. It is super crucial that the most impacted communities have an opportunity to really do that. And then more than anything, making sure that you are contacting your senators. If you are in Arizona, we're asking you to contact Senator Kelly and Senator Sinema to tell them that we need a pathway to citizenship, but we need it now. There's so many conversations happening right now, but we're asking you to please do that. Take the time to email them. We have actually developed a toolkit for you, so it's really easy. We're going to be dropping it in the chat and also on Facebook Live. It's going to be super easy. alientoaz.org/We Are Arizona-toolkit. So that's going to be in our website where you can download images from impacted community and be sharing it out, to be inviting us to speak, and to making sure that this is not something that we're going to be here talking about it 20 years from now. So we're counting with you. And with that, we do have a couple of words from former Senator Bob Worsley, because we know that we are not alone in this, and we want to make sure that we understand that there's people who are allies. And right now, just like I invited you to join us, we have allies that have our back, and now more than ever, we need to make sure that you're speaking up, so that we're not here 20 years from now. As I was mentioning at the beginning, I am a DACA recipient myself, and having to deal with that uncertainty was one of my main motivations of founding Aliento, so we can begin our healing journey. But just in the words of Jose, we cannot begin the healing without the acknowledgement. So we have to acknowledge the pain, the uncertainty, but we have to be radical with our hope. Hope can be a tricky emotion and can be something that I find myself meditating and praying about. But it is that hope that we can hold on to remember that a hope can be turned into something actionable. And right now, if you were moved, as I was seeing in the chat, if you are a parent, if you are a business leader, if you are a student, there is a place where we can have hope that you don't have to have a 4.0 in order for you to have opportunities. Because in the United States, we have that promise of being the land of opportunity and be rooted in freedom. So what if we were to close our eyes and really imagine what would it look for all of us to be free and to be holding on to that hope? So with that, I'm gonna pass it over from a couple of words from Senator Worsley, and after that, we're gonna be closing it up and having some opportunity to have questions from the panel.
As a former Arizona state senator and a devout Mormon, I ran against and defeated Senate President Russell Pierce, author of SB 1070, or Show Me Your Papers bill. I've also had some success in business. I founded Sky Mall when I was 35 back in 1989, and I sold it to Rupert Murdoch in 2001. In 2012, I was recruited to run, and I defeated Russell Pierce by 12%. I demonstrated that being pro-immigrant is a winning strategy, even in a Republican primary. My love for the Hispanic people comes from many years working with them in my church. I consider them some of my best friends, thousands who do not have documents to be here, but have settled down, raised a family, and paid taxes for many years. I retired from the Senate in 2019, and then researched, wrote, and published a book called The Horseshoe Virus, about how Arizona became the immigration epicenter. After hearing about my book, Senator Mitt Romney introduced me to the American Business Immigration Coalition, or ABIC, to continue my efforts to advance common sense, bipartisan immigration reform, and I agreed to organize an Intermountain chapter of ABIC, comprising Arizona, Utah, Nevada, Idaho, and Colorado. Just a few weeks ago, ABIC and Aliento fought hard to pass a referendum that will give Arizonans the opportunity to vote on providing in-state tuition to Dreamers in 2022. This was the first pro-immigrant reform passed through the Arizona legislature in probably 30 years and marks a dramatic departure from the Russell Pierce era of bigotry and discrimination. As a member of my church, I believe strongly in the importance of protecting and advocating for minorities, immigrants, and underserved populations. I'm thankful for powerful Mormon lawmakers like Michelle Udall, who co-sponsored with Aliento the Arizona legislation. We urge Republican senators in Washington to follow us as we advocate for these immigrants. Right now is the time to lift our dreamers out of the shadows and legalize our ag workers who are working so hard to keep food on our tables and make sure all of our crops are healthy and productive and harvested. We're here to say that in 2021, this is the year to start building a bipartisan, productive, and modern immigration system. There's huge support by American voters for Dreamers, farm workers, and essential workers. And there's a responsibility for elected officials to move forward. Let's push them. Let's encourage them to do what's right. Do the right thing and pass this legislation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you everybody who joined us. Now we're gonna be opening up from questions from the media and from the attendees, and we're gonna start with the first question. But before that, as former Senator Worsley said, the time is now. So we're going to be having a couple of questions and then we're officially going to be wrapping up. So the first question is actually in Spanish, and I'm going to say it in Spanish and then I'm going to translate it so then folks can understand it. And if we can get some of our panelists to answer that in Spanish, that would be wonderful. So the question comes from Daniela at Univision. ¿Cuál es el impacto que esta incertidumbre de sus estatus migratorios ha tenido en su salud mental y emocional? What is the emotional and mental health impact that your immigration status has had on you? So if we can potentially go with José, do you want to take that? En español, por favor.
Sí, como mencionamos, el impacto mental y emocional es de que sientes de que vales menos. Siempre hay esta incertidumbre donde no importa lo que yo haga, nunca va a ser suficiente, porque el sistema aquí te dice de que no calificas para una licencia, no calificas para un tipo de trabajo, no calificas para colegiaturas estatales, no calificas para todo esto. Y al mismo tiempo siempre estás en el miedo y la incertidumbre de que te pueden separar de tu familia. Entonces esos traumas se quedan contigo y te afectan. Para mí me afectó en la forma donde tenía muchos problemas con rencor y enojo, donde apenas unos cuantos años he empezado a trabajar en terapia para no sentirme así, sentirme diferente, sentirme de que tengo valor como persona. Y creo que mucha de la comunidad sigue pasando por esto, donde es de día a día sobrevivir el siguiente día. Y al mismo tiempo, creo que esto es sistemático, haciéndolo, destrozando nuestras familias. Me gustaría a mí creer en un futuro donde no tengamos que pasar de estos mismos traumas cada día.
Anyone else from the panelists who would like to answer about the mental health impact? I know Ola and Yadira, you talked a little bit about that.
Okay, so es difícil. Te levantas el día y en tu mente lo primero que piensas es seguir tu vida, pero al mismo tiempo siempre está atrás de ti en tu mente. Y si pasa esto, y si pasa lo otro. Ángel habló sobre el plan que tienes que tener si llega a pasar algo. Después del 2010 aquí, cuando pasó lo de la SB 1070, recuerdo que hicimos un toolkit para las familias para que se prepararan. Si pasa esto, estos son los pasos que van a pasar. Si tienes hijos, aquí está el poder para que X persona te cuide tus hijos, para que X persona pueda tener acceso a tus propiedades, a tus cuentas bancarias y todo eso. Entonces, es un trauma que a diario vives y a la misma vez en veces se hace como repetitivo y es triste cuando este trauma ya es como parte de ti. Ahora que tengo un hijo de 5 años, en veces digo yo tengo DACA por 2 años, ¿qué va a pasar en 2 años? ¿Verdad? Porque ya no nomás soy yo, entonces ya ahora también es un niño de 5 años. Igual con mi familia, pues mis papás, ¿verdad? Al pasar del tiempo, no se están poniendo más jóvenes, voy a decir, ¿verdad? Entonces, ¿qué es lo que va a pasar el día de mañana? Entonces, es difícil, pero igual como dijo Reina, ¿verdad? Siempre hay una fe que nos mueve adelante. Como dijo Michael también, nuestra comunidad es resilient, no sé exactamente cómo traducir eso, pero siempre le echamos ganas hacia adelante, pero en veces te cansas de echarle ganas hacia adelante.
Gracias, Yadira. We have a question from Alisa Resnick from the Arizona Public Media. She paraphrased about saying 20 years since it's been 20 years since the first DREAM Act hearing. What are some of the protections that are available for other members of mixed immigration status families? And how have conversations among mixed immigration status families changed over the years? So any of the panelists would want to take that? maybe Ola or Michael, I know that that you adjusted your status and you probably grew up in a mixed immigration status family. Do you have any insight if you have seen any of those changes? Let's say, I know Michael, you mentioned 2010 when you first got involved. Ola, you kind of share a little bit about having that blackout experience at the Dream Act hearing in 2011. What has changed since then from your perspective?
From my perspective, it changes every time we change administrations. During the Trump era, I think what my family and I experienced was a bit harsher treatment, maybe by ICE and by other law enforcement officials. In addition to that, now with the Biden administration, what we've seen in my family has been more dignity being interwoven within the policies pertaining to ICE and how they handle family separation. So it's, again, this bolsters that point that it's very tumultuous and it's very difficult to exist as an undocumented person because of the fact that things change on a daily basis. And it's hard to foster stability and hope and maintain hope when that is the case.
Thank you. Michael, anything that you would want to add?
Yes, I would actually like to go to the previous question, answered in Spanish if possible. Para empezar, no, estas son mis opiniones y no las del ejército, ¿no? Estando aquí en Corea del Sur, pero quisiera nada más hacerles no saber, ¿no? Haciendo reflexiones en los últimos 10 años. Yo pude obtener mi residencia en el 2017 y últimamente me enlisté en el ejército. Pude obtener mi ciudadanía en 2019, pero desde el momento que me enlisté hasta el momento que estuve yo en mi primera base, estacionado en Virginia, al día de hoy, las historias de nuestras familias con estatus mixto, ¿no? Todavía persisten, ¿no? Aún estando en el ejército, tengo soldados yo que vienen de varias áreas, ¿no? del mundo, ¿no? Del globo. Y cada familia inmigrante, ¿no? Tiene una historia. Yo me acuerdo que cada vez que yo salía de cada viaje hasta que mi familia pudo obtener su residencia, tenía que preparar un paquete, preparar un paquete de información de qué pasaría si mamá, papá fueran deportados, quién se quedaría con mis hermanas, mi hermano, mi casa, nuestras propiedades, ¿no? Lo poco que tenemos. Y eso te afecta personalmente, te afecta mentalmente, te afecta emocionalmente y hasta el día de hoy me afecta a mí personalmente también. Aún teniendo residencia, ciudadanía ahora, y estando en uniforme, que es un poco peculiar, ¿no? Cada vez que tengo una confrontación con la policía, ¿no? Mis manos, mis palmas sudan porque me acuerdo, ¿no? de lo que ha pasado en los últimos años. Yo lo que diría, ¿no? que lo más importante que hay aquí es crear esos espacios para nuestras familias, nuestros estudiantes, nuestros streamers, para poder dar sus testimonios, ¿no? Sus historias. Al fin del día, el movimiento persiste solo por nuestras historias y la disciplina que tenemos de poder seguir adelante. Pero personalmente les puedo decir que aún siendo ya un ciudadano yo, mi familia no pudo obtener su residencia hasta que pude yo hacer una petición por ellos. Para poder cuidar de ellos, protegerlos en sí. Las oportunidades son muy cortas aún para nuestras familias inmigrantes. Y yo lo que diría que lo más importante que tenemos que hacer es continuar organizando. Aún estando yo aquí al otro lado del mundo, les puedo decir que yo puedo ver el trabajo que ustedes hacen en sus comunidades y hay que seguir siendo persistentes.
Muchas gracias, Michael. Y tenemos ya la última pregunta de las redes sociales. We have the last question now coming from folks. and this is gonna be in English and in Spanish. So I'm gonna pass it over to Jose and Angel so you can pay extra attention to me. I'm pulling out my teacher background right now. So I'm gonna say it in English and Spanish, and Jose and Angel, if you can share it in both languages, that would be great. So the question is, can you tell us about what is the status of the DREAM Act? We've been using that word for the whole time here. Tell us where's the status and what are some of the plans to really advocate right now, especially Angel, if you can really crystallize. You mentioned a little bit about the difference of DACA and DREAM Act and why it's important that we talked about like who would qualify under the DREAM Act. So what is the status and what are some of the plans to make sure that this bill gets it to the finish line? And I'm going to say it in Spanish. ¿Nos pueden decir cuál es el estatus en donde está el DREAM Act en este momento en Washington, D.C. y qué planes tienen ustedes para seguir luchando por este proyecto de ley?
Well, I start. The DREAM Act is stuck in the Senate. I think this is something that we have seen throughout the years. It passed in the House with the HR 6, the Dream and Promise Act, but it's right now stuck in the Senate. There's two main vehicles that could go through. One of them would be through reconciliation, if making sure that if it's considered a budgetary issue, there will be, you get all the Democrats and probably be happening sometime in October or September. And then the other one will be is we can overcome the filibuster. We can get 10 Republicans to agree with 50 Democrats at least, then we can potentially pass it out. But we have seen that in the past, as Michael and Yadira and all were referring to 2010 when the DREAM Act failed because we were not able to overcome the filibuster. So this is where it's at right now. Want me to say in Spanish? Okay. Ahorita el acta sueño o el DREAM Act pasó en la Cámara Baja y está estancado ahorita en el Senado. Hay dos formas de que pueda pasar. Una es de que si puede agarrar 60 votos que necesita para que pueda pasar el famoso filibuster, donde necesitas 60 senadores que votan a favor. Si tienes a 50 demócratas, más mínimo 10 republicanos para que pueda suceder. En el pasado, la última vez que se votó fue en el 2010, no pudimos agarrar los 60 votos. La otra forma se llama reconciliación. Es un procedimiento que trabaja en el Senado donde agarras a la mayoría, que es 50 votos más 1, 51 votos, y lo puede pasar. Pero el problema es de que si se puede considerar un tema de inmigración como parte del presupuesto federal. Aquí es lo que se está debatiendo. Entonces ahorita lo que queremos hacer nosotros es seguir presionando a nuestros senadores y congresistas para que puedan, de que no estemos viendo en este tipo de limbo por mucho tiempo.
También quería añadir que siempre escucho esa pregunta de que ¿qué puedo hacer yo como individuo para ayudar al movimiento? Y probablemente lo que diría yo, o lo que siempre digo, es promover la conciencia en la sociedad, asegurarse que la gente entienda lo que significa ser indocumentado, a contrario a lo que significa ser una persona con DACA. Porque aunque tener DACA no es algo definitivo, es mejor que ser indocumentado, y ha habido muchas ocasiones donde me enfrento a personas y por pensar que yo soy un soñador, tengo DACA, y en realidad no es así. Porque cuando las personas tienen un estatus de DACA y dicen que son indocumentados, confunde mucho a las personas. Entonces, cuando vean a alguien que tenga DACA y diga que es indocumentado, corregirlos, porque eso hace que la gente indocumentada se pongan al lado en la conversación como estamos aquí, como en la conversación que estamos teniendo aquí. Y incluso también confunde mucho a nuestros aliados y a nuestros legisladores, que es probablemente lo más importante, porque si nuestros legisladores están confundidos, eso no es bueno para nosotros, no es bueno para nadie. Y pues para terminar, nomás quería decir que al principio, la verdad sí odiaba ser diferente, pero con el tiempo aprendí a aceptar mi realidad y verla como un retrozo que trabajar duro para superar. Y eso es lo que tenemos que hacer todos, porque sí es un retrozo, sí es una cosa que tenemos que, en la que tenemos que triunfar, pero en realidad nomás promoviendo la conciencia se puede aliviar muchas cosas.
Angel, do you want to say that in English? Just a little bit, a summarized version?
Yes, of course. So, what I was saying in Spanish is that what I believe it to be the most important is spreading awareness, because it is extremely important for people to understand what it means to be undocumented, contrary to what it means to hold DACA status. This is really important because when people say that they have DACA status, when people say that they are undocumented, but in reality they have DACA status, it confuses our allies, it confuses our communities, and it confuses our lawmakers. And that is dangerous because our lawmakers need to be able to distinguish between the two people, between DACA and undocumented. It's most impactful because when lawmakers think that by being a dreamer you're DACA, it pushes out everybody who's undocumented. It pushes them to the side, it shuns them out, and they lose parts in taking place in the political conversation and political spaces. So that's why it's very important to be able to distinguish. And if you ever hear someone say, oh, I have DACA, but I'm undocumented, that's not the same thing. Having DACA is not the absolute best, but it's way better than being undocumented. So just being able to distinguish between those two things is really important.
Thank you so much, Angel. And thank you so much to our panelists for being part of this very important conversation. We know that we're not covering every single thing, but we wanted to be this a start. And as Angel said it today, there is a call to action. You can do something about it. So definitely check out our toolkit at alientoac.org. We are Arizona/toolkit. And if you're outside of Arizona, there's also resources for you to get involved. Lastly, if there are some members of the media that you want to have follow-up questions, please be in communication with us in case if you want to do an individual interview, we will make sure that we can coordinate that. And with that, this concludes our panel conversation, a roundtable of 20 years of uncertainty with our American dreamers. Thank you all so much for being here today. And let's remember, we're not alone, and the moment to act is now. We don't want to be having these panel conversations again 20 years from now. Let's ensure that people like Jose, Yadira, Angel, and the close to 1.5 million dreamers that have both DACA and are undocumented, as Angel really presents that, have an opportunity to really have certainty and begin their healing journey. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Recording stopped.
Good.
So